Hey, Mike, good to see you again.
And it is absolutely wonderful to be back here with you. And I'm looking forward to see where we go today.
Yeah, me too, me too. And we'll keep it real with the viewers here. We jumped on about half an hour ago, and we've just been sort of catching up everything that's happened in the last sort of month, almost two, since we've created a Cultivating Courage episode. So yeah, lots of things happening in our worlds, in the world. So yeah, we thought we would jump in with a bit of a theme just to kind of steer the conversation, create a little bit of order. And what I would love to invite us to jam on today, Mike, is the idea of responsibility.
Mhm.
So a friend and a colleague of mine, Zach Carlson, who I did some coaching with last year, and we did a lot of exploration together in the context of Zach being my coach for a number of months last year. And one of the things that he reflected to me was that I took a lot of responsibility for certain things in my life. And he said to me one day, he said, "Anne, do you realize that responsibility is a finite resource?" And it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, like, oh, okay. And so that little anecdote has been with me ever since. Every time I sort of hear that word come up, I'm like, okay, is this where I'm going to invest my responsibility? I've got this one jar, whether it's a day's worth, a week's worth, whatever, but just this idea around being really intentional with responsibility. So I wanted to throw over to you, Mike, and see what comes up for you with that little intro.
Oh, there's so much that comes up for me. So one thing that maybe I don't think anyone would anticipate is that we've talked about polarities several times in one way or another in this platform. And I think that for people like us who tend to lean on the responsible leg, it would benefit us to actually be a little bit more irresponsible in a conscious way, to like, all right, I'm going to go out tonight and selfishly do whatever, I'm going to go to for me, like maybe going to a Knicks game or a Jets game, or I don't know, that's not even irresponsible, but you know what I mean? Just like putting down all of the quote unquote obligations and the shoulds and the things that I feel like I need to show up a certain way. I need to show up as someone who's got my shit together. It can
Mhm.
actually be really liberating to say, look, what if we tried the exact opposite thing and said, okay, I'm going to be wildly irresponsible tonight. I'm going to eat whatever I want for dessert. And it tends to be for people like you and me that even when we're wildly irresponsible, we're just like, I'm going to have 3 cookies tonight and not 1 cookie, but still it's kind of a step in the right direction. And I think maybe something else that is coming up for me, I don't know if this is why you brought in this topic, but I was sharing with you that I've had back pain for the last 5 years, and that we can get caught up in all sorts of stories, and I'm caught up in all sorts of stories about what might be causing the pain. But there's a belief that it's structural, that I have a herniated disc, that I hurt it, like weightlifting or playing a sport, and it's all physical. And I actually read a book recently called Healing Back Pain that looks at the archetype of someone like you and me who's responsible, who is gentle, who like really feels like they can carry the people around them. Like if let's just say my parents were ill, I would be the one, that the caretaker who would be there and also be able to do my job well, and also to cook dinner for my family, and there's
Mhm.
all sorts of different ways that it's a really powerful skill, but also we're not putting our own oxygen mask on first. And what this book taught me, among many other things, is that if I am overly leaning on that responsible leg and not giving myself any grace, then it might manifest as back pain for me. And that's been really liberating as an insight, in the way that for you, when Zach said responsibility is a finite resource, I am realizing that in myself, that I do want to show up for so many different things, but I'm one human. And I guess it brings up community for me too. The way that we live in a hyper individualistic in the Western world, we live in hyper individualistic culture and society. If we are able to ask for help, like that's a radical thing. Seek support, be in groups where we know that we're held. Uh, there's a lot there that it kind of responsibility can become shared, and it's less of a finite resource and more of a communal, paired together. Like I don't have to carry this burden myself. And a lot of coaches, and you and I for sure, we are we're really good at doing things ourselves, but it's incomplete on its own.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So many different threads there to pull on. But I really love the way that you describe this idea of this sort of communal responsibility. And I imagine when you say that, like the flow of responsibility. So maybe at some point, for instance, somebody's back is not feeling well, so they kind of lean out a little and take a little less, while other people sort of lean in and take a little more. I think that's a really beautiful model and philosophy. And as you said, something not necessarily promoted in this world, maybe not even intentionally. As you reference sort of coaches, and I think for any sort of space holder or caretaker, there's a pattern that I see show up quite often. It's called the enduring pattern. So there's a model, I'm not sure if we've spoken about it before. It's called the 5 personality patterns. I can't think off my head the name of the guy who found it, might come to me. But if people want to look it up, the 5 personality patterns, you'll find
it up right now.
Thank you. And one of them is the enduring pattern. And it's all of these patterns have sort of a gift and a shadow. But for the enduring pattern, the gift is being able to hold space for others and being able to hold a lot. And you can already sort of imagine what the shadow is not letting other people hold things for you. And just it's taking a lot on board, tolerating a lot of things that maybe other people wouldn't. And it's been really interesting because this is a pattern that I run. It's been really interesting to be in a context where I've got somebody reflecting to me what I'm tolerating, where I might not have otherwise noticed. And it can be as simple as letting your socks get holes in them and waiting till they're threadbare before you throw them out and buy new ones, right? It's like maybe your toe's going through it and it's annoying, but you kind of just keep putting up with it until you think it's time to buy the new pair of socks. It's actually a lot nicer to just go and buy a new pair of socks. Most of us, that are watching this will probably have the ability to do that, right? To get to replace the socks a little sooner and be more comfortable, but we just don't. And that's just a very simple example. But when you start looking around, it was a couple of years ago, my partner said to me, he's like, I think you need to get a proper desk to do your work on. So I was working on sort of a pretty small little wooden desk, and I was always struggling to fit things on my desk and just kind of making it work. And he's like, why don't you just buy yourself a nice big desk where you can spread everything out and you feel a bit more comfortable? And it didn't even occur to me that was something that I should do. So it's a really, really interesting pattern, because if I would look at the same situation with somebody else and say, oh, why don't we take care of you and get a nice space and make it nice to work? But I just didn't join those dots for myself. And so it's a really interesting one to look at, I think, and notice that responsibility was always sort of going outward, but we do have an opportunity to turn that in as well. It's like, how can I be responsible for taking care of myself instead of making sure the whole world's all right, giving a little bit back?
Yeah, it's just like allowing yourself to want something is that could be really edgy for a lot of people. And it certainly has been for me. That really resonates to me with there's like a Stockholm syndrome element to it, where you can just get used to whatever your situation is. I think that's a really valuable skill to a certain extent, that I don't need a fancy desk to operate well. And it sounds like there was a part of you that wanted and acknowledged that I could use a better space. I could afford to go get a new pair of socks. I really resonate with, sometimes the simple, silly examples are the most resonant, and both of those really resonate with me, because I have worn clothes till they're a rag. many times
Mhm.
in my life. It's
Yeah.
very specifically true for me. It's also, as a maybe a random corollary, this is reminding me a little bit of the drama triangle. I don't know if you're familiar with the victim, the villain, and the hero.
Yeah.
And being overly responsible feels like a hero type of move in the drama triangle. And what I mean by that is that a lot of things aren't our burden to bear individually. And what the hero will do is try and fix, like solve for everyone else's emotional chaos or chaos in the environment or chaos in the world. And uh, I know that's been true for me of the victim, the villain, and the hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
I most often go into hero. Like at work, if a staff person, if I'm a manager and there's a staff person who is really struggling and it's a very time sensitive thing that needs to get done, I am the type of manager that says, it's okay, I'll teach you another time. I'm gonna jump in and fix this right now, which is different than taking responsibility. And I think this may be a interesting time to bring in a distinction of like, what do you in conscious leadership group, they talk about taking 100% responsibility. And I'd be curious to hear where you look at the line of taking 100% responsibility versus I'm over extending myself. Like where would you say that you're taking 100% responsibility versus I'm doing too much. I'm taking on other people's burdens at this point.
Yeah. It's a big question.
Yeah,
And I like to dance in the land of nuance. I would say it depends, because
of
I
course.
I think I think it has a lot also to do with capacity. I'm just trying to think of a good sort of real life example to land at. Maybe something like diet and nutrition and nourishing yourself well. It's like if you're in a partnership with somebody who's not particularly invested or interested in understanding
Mm,
how to feed their body in an optimal way, but for you it's important, it might be that you need to take a little bit more responsibility with managing nightly meals, for instance. But if you're going to do that 7 days a week, then you have to stop and go, okay, well, first of all, do I have the capacity to do that? And is that okay in the context of the relationship and what's going on, or is there a responsibility to bring the other person along, or should there be
yeah,
conversations around adapting? I mean, 100% responsibility in everything. It's really up to interpretation, because some people might say, well, that's being a control freak, right?
yeah,
Especially where it does influence other people. So it really does depend for me on the context. But I would say usually we're either taking too much or not enough.
yes,
And it's because it's a hard line to dance on, and it does require a little bit of thought and reflection. And quite often where we're not taking enough and we're unhappy with what's going on, it's a blind spot. And the one of the key sort of signalers to that blind spot is normally a sense of resentment on some level. So if there's resentment coming up, probably it could be also too much responsibility, not enough or too much responsibility coming up. So I struggle to answer that a little bit in a black and white kind of way that would match every circumstance, because I think there's a lot of moving parts. I don't know if that really
yeah.
helps at all, but I think it depends.
It is a big question, and I always appreciate the way that you're able to paint with more colors than black and white. None of these are. I think that everything is fluid, and taking 100% responsibility looks different in every single situation. But I think in relationships, so intimate relationships, spousal relationships, or in work, especially in hierarchical relationships, uh, I have very clear examples that are coming to mind. So I can remember there have been many times in my life, but I'm trying to think of a specific one. There was a moment this past August, I was very busy on an accounting project, and I'm a manager on my accounting side of things. And I was working with a staff person who I had to train up on the skills of being able to do the type of work that we were working on. And so if I am being the hero, which is taking more than 100% responsibility, and trying to solve everything and not allow for any discomfort, because heroes want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable, everyone's soothed all the time. If the staff person was struggling, I would say, you did a good enough job. I am going to take the work paper from here. I'm going to finish this work item so that we can just get it done. And what I've done there is I've deprived the staff person from developing the skill set of just like learning what it's like to make a couple of mistakes and to get some feedback in real time about what it is to make some mistakes. And I've also started to show them, if I don't get it done, Mike is going to get this done. And then I become the guy at work who is just jumping in to fix everything all the time when something needs to get done. And then I'm on, a one-way ticket to burnout for sure. If I look at it as taking 100% responsibility, and also that I would want anyone that I'm working with to also take 100% responsibility, I would probably just own where I could have trained them a little bit. I don't know if trained them better, but like there's some way that I showed up that I want to own that led to there being a mistake. And there's also, like there's a duty to be done on the other end too, that isn't mine to fix. And I'd say like it's not black and white, but for me to just say, I showed up a certain way that created this, because we're all creating our own realities all the time. And I don't have to solve for the other person who's also creating this reality to some extent. I'm just going to own what's mine. And hopefully that the people I work with are also looking at that. If not me modeling it, they're also just like, they're humans that care about how they're showing up. So I think in a very practical sense, that's true for a lot of managers who are really good at being the responsible person who get shit done, versus delegating it and letting other people make mistakes and etc.
I really love that you share this example, because I think it really does make real and tangible what it looks like to take sort of too much or too less. And I fully agree with you that sort of excessive taking of responsibility, it will eventually lead to burnout. I mean, coming back to that, another one of these principles, cause and effect, right? You're teaching somebody how to work with you, and it's like, Mike's always going to pick up my stuff. I had the same pattern of work. If Anne's always going to catch my stuff, then I can just deliver it a little bit half-assed, and he'll sort it, she'll sort it. And that's kind of that's an appropriate response to being managed in that way, I would assert. We're teaching people in that process, but then they're structurally taking more than 100%, and being only one person, that's kind of the maths just doesn't check out. And on the other end, if you're leaning out and like, just fail forward, you'll be right, sort it out, that's also going to come back to bite you if you're too far away from those kind of things. So it is a dance, I think, finding that line, finding how to be in healthy relationship with people, whether it's a colleague, a partner, a friend, on where the responsibility lies. I think it's something that's hard to really just draw a straight line down the middle and say, this is your 50, this is my 50, or your 100 and my 100, if you look at the conscious leadership model. But yeah, it's got many facets, I think, to consider. And I think, coming back to that idea that it is finite at the end of the day, meaning it is like 100's 100. We can't make more out of it. And I think that's that example you give, if you look at what would be on the other side of that. So if you're giving 110 or 120 at work, well, then where does that extra 10 or 20 come out of?
Yes.
Where is that gone? Does that mean you're going to have to get takeout instead of cooking a healthy dinner? Does that mean you won't have time for a meaningful conversation with somebody that you care about in the evening? That you'll miss something, some sort of event with friends? Whatever it is, I think it's important to look at sort of all the different moving parts there.
Yeah. And what I'm in touch with is that exerting above 100% is, it seems like a grasp at control, right? Like someone who's got this, who tries to be overly responsible is wanting to control certain things that are not in control. And yeah, like the serenity prayer, and just the give me the, what do you know exactly what it is? Like, give me the courage to,
Yeah,
I forget what it is.
to change the things that I can change, to accept what I can't, and to know the difference, wisdom to know the difference, something along those lines.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it seems pretty intimately connected actually with responsibility, where there's certain things that are within our control, and responsibility to me would be to the best of your ability without overextending too much,
Mm.
taking care of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it is just wildly out of our control. Life is chaotic, and so much is out of our control. Our
Mm.
feeble attempts at trying to manage other people, let alone just managing our own self, like being aware of what's happening within us and what our actual responsibilities are, and
Mm.
what our energy state is, and what's our emotional state, and like what am I taking in my environment right now. We're blunting everything if we're constantly trying to be in control all the time. We're less available to life, really, just like to being
Yeah.
attuned to, uh it cuts off like creativity, it cuts off connection, uh and in my personal instance, it makes me very serious, like
Mm.
overly serious.
Mm.
We're adults here, we got to get things done, we don't have time to laugh, we don't have time to talk, we're
Mm.
adults.
Yeah.
And ugh, it's
I'm smiling
exhausting.
in recognition. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting, this idea of control. As a great saying from one of my favorite mythologists, Michael Meade, who says a false sense of security is the only kind there is.
Mm.
And I think that's just perfect.
Yes.
I think he nails it with that. But we still try. We still try, but it's not always so effective. But I think you talked about the managing, and it just sort of reminded me of this idea that I think it's important that we move away from time management. We
Mm.
can't really manage time. And I imagine that, Mike, as a manager supporting somebody professionally, there's probably that time question of like, we've got to get this done quickly. Like you work on a deadline based exercise, so like, let's get this done quickly. But if we switch that lens over to responsibility management rather than time management, I think it can produce some pretty good outcomes.
Mm.
Energy management, responsibility management. I think it's a really nice way to look at it, rather than just being so fixated on time, because it's so intangible, right? To imagine managing time, but you can do it with energy, you can do it with responsibility.
Mm. It does orient back to things that are actually within your control, right? Time is totally not in our control.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a more it's a framing that invites more possibility and more sort of
Yes.
action and planning solutions, for sure.
Mm.
No, I love that you brought that in. I'm curious, Mike, just looking as we go towards the hour here, is there anything else that you wanted to bring into this conversation around responsibility that you feel like is important before we close?
There's so much that we could say about this, but is there anything that's up for you here?
No, I feel like we've covered some good layers. I think we've maybe answered a lot of questions that weren't even there, but
Yeah.
yeah, but it's been fun riffing on this idea, and I love that we've brought in some of these real examples from our own lives. I think it always helps to ground these ideas. And I always find it such a funny thing that you and I have similar experiences, and people may know we're both INFJs, so we do have the same personality type, the Myers-Briggs. And what is it? I think 2% of the population or something are INFJs.
Yeah. It's a very rare personality type.
Yeah, but we seem
The
to have this
rarest.
way of finding each other. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we do. And I guess, I don't know if this type of personality lends more to being the kind of the caretaker who shoulders a lot of burdens and is, values autonomy, and we're introverts, so we do like to do things on our own, and that there's beauty there. But I guess one of the shadows of this quality is that we don't seek support and ask for help. So I guess that is one thing that I was in touch with. If I had to share just one closing thought, is that my invitation to myself and you, and if this resonates with the folks that are tuned in, is if it feels edgy to seek support or to just say, I'm taking on too much right now, then it's probably a good place to look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just as you're saying that, I see this potentiality to move from this model of finite responsibility that we started with and kind of attach ourselves to a field of responsibility that is that kind of more communal responsibility. So perhaps that's the challenge for all of us, and to invite the viewers into, is where can you get into that shared field? Where can you, if you're always a giver, where can you be a receiver? Where can you invite somebody to help share the responsibility a little? And I can see some opportunities in my life where that can happen.
Me too.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question to close on, and to see what comes up for people. So if anybody's got something that they want to share, feel free to share it in the comments too. Mike and I always love to hear the feedback from these conversations too, and if we can make it a little bit dynamic and get some chats going in the comments, we'll all learn together. So why not?
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful place to close. Thanks for bringing in this topic, responsibility. We've probably spoken to some degree about it, but I don't think we've dedicated a half hour like this to just jam on it. And it feels very alive for me right now. It's a very, very alive topic. So it was very timely.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for jamming with me, Mike, and thanks everyone for watching along. And we look forward to hearing what jumped out for you. Until next time.
See you all next time.